Welcome back to another V-Rising video. We are going to be doing a follow-up to the last episode, which was the first 5 hours of our Gloomrot experience as a trio on a quad server with a pretty new player. We're just going to get back into where we were. Now, I hope you all have been enjoying your V-Rising experience, especially in Gloomrot. The changes have been absolutely amazing. A lot of PvP, very active servers, a lot of life, tons of different interactions that, we haven't really seen, those of us who've been playing V-Rising since early access. Just a lot of different changes. And it's really nice to see a ton of different people enjoying those changes. So, just picking up where we were, this was the next day. I logged on immediately. We got into some fights here as a solo, but then Bane was around, and I realized, you know what? I think I'd rather just, fight Bane, because I hadn't killed him yet, and he was already low, so I just stuck around. So he seems like a really interesting fight. I'm probably going to go back and, enjoy him more, but this situation, I just took advantage of the fact that he was so low. So also wanted to test out more of the new weapons and whatnot. I had merciless iron pistols at this point. My one of my teammates spent some time just to grind up and downed Jade and got the items needed for that. So that was a nice change, just so I could test the pistols out and whatnot. Pistols and greatsword, but I still haven't decided exactly how I feel about those things, but we'll see. So obviously here I decided it was time to go kill Octavian. I had spent too much time. I probably could have killed him yesterday or the day before this anyway, but I just was kind of enjoying everything. He's still a really easy fight, even though here it seems like I was getting destroyed. But honestly, the spin to win is the only really dangerous thing about him. So if you take your time and really pay attention to that, I was trying to do it with pistols. I will say that normally I'm running Reaper or axes in this fight and a lot of these fights, which makes it a lot easier. For me anyway, I'm just not used to using pistols yet, so still trying to work out the kinks. So on the ride back home, we actually found a castle that was near our base that was already decaying, which is really interesting. Obviously, you want to take advantage of that as much as we can. You never know what's going to be in here, but unfortunately, after deleting the castle, there really wasn't much left. I don't know if they, this is actually a week. I think it's a weekend raid server, so I'm curious as to where all the loot went. Somebody probably already saw this, so no dice on this one, but. So, here I was headed up to the Cursed Forest to make a shroud, so I wanted to stop off in the Werewolf Village really quick just to get the pristine leather that we needed, or pristine hide. And then I went up to fight the Old Wanderer, which, honestly, I won't lie, this is a pretty crazy. I was trying to do this really early just to see if I could take advantage of my level and whatnot, but I'm not really sure. I think the biggest issue was just using greatsword and pistol in this situation. Maybe pistol, if you're really used to pistol, it might be a decent enough tool to fight him, but I really feel that Reaper or axes would be 10 times better, specifically because if you're familiar with those weapons, their attacks and whatnot go through terrain like trees and rocks, not the unbreakable rocks and whatnot, but it goes through them, so it's a lot easier to reach him. It was actually getting so difficult, I actually died here, so I swapped my armor out with a teammate who had higher level armor than me at this point. He'd been playing a little bit, so he got on it earlier than I did. So here you can see, the issues with using greatsword in the Cursed Forest without being able to see where you're going. He's running everywhere. If you've done this at lower level, you probably know how insane this is. So I'm sitting here trying to push the enemies back while also trying to catch up to him and do damage. The pistols, you're stopping while you're fighting him. And of course, Styx decides, you know what? Nah, you don't get to play the video game. So I have to run from here. I get caught, can't see where I'm going. Frogs are landing everywhere. This guy's spinning. I'm just at this point. I'm just kind of fingering a bunch of stuff, and the frog and Styx combo is just too much. So after dying, that many times, it was just getting really old. Again, like you can see here, I just wanted to show the difficulty of this, of how much struggle that I was experiencing. The amount of just random things, just all the ads, or mobs anyway. The frogs, man, the frogs, dude. You just can't see what's happening. I'm trying to get through, don't have anything to push through these guys, and then frogs would just land on me out of nowhere like this. Let me see. Should be pretty soon here. And frog. So it's just like, come on, dude. So I didn't let that all stop me. I decided, you know what? All right, we're going to do this. Just take your time. Be smart. So here I was able to finally be careful here. You know, popping my ult went on just to stay close to him. And even though there were mobs spawning on us or chasing after us, we took the time. We got it done. Down the Wanderer, finally. So again, highly recommend doing this with a Reaper or axes, not pistols, unless you're just like a pistol god or something. That I'm missing about those. It's just so much easier to be able to set it and forget it with a Reaper or axes. Just throw it through terrain, not get your attacks, your E and whatnot blocked by stuff. So yeah, definitely. I swapped to Reaper immediately after that. I just went back, got a Merciless Iron Reaper, and said no more. We are not doing that anymore. So after this, I was level. I believe it was like 61, 63, something around along those lines. And went back into Cursed Forest to do a nice little farming run here. As well as down, just basically experiencing the new enemies here. They're actually pretty dangerous. They definitely feel really good here. The Banshees and whatnot are pretty similar to how they were. So, but some of the new enemies, they hit pretty hard. So at this point, Falrot, the Mega Nerd, decided that it was time for me to kill him. So he walked over and said, "Hey, bro, you need my stuff." And I said, "Okay, well, I wasn't planning on killing you right now, but you know it's daytime and whatnot. There's other enemies to kill, but I guess we'll just kill you because if anyone's familiar with this fight, if you take your time and just use blood counter, some kind of counter move that's not Ward of the Damned, so you don't trigger these counters here, and use Reaper, he's very easy. So just definitely take advantage of that." Then I headed over to Angora. You know, these silkworms are now extremely important. In the previous version, they didn't really... I'm gonna be honest. If you were playing solo and you weren't trying to kit out tons and tons of servants, silkworms weren't really that important. Some people may not agree with me, but I really don't think they were, because you could just loot Brighthaven for tons of silk to get your Blood Moon. But silk and Ghost Yarn have actually swapped places now. Silk is still available in Brighthaven, but it's only for Dawnthorn, and it doesn't drop nearly at the rate that you need it to. So getting these silkworms is a huge deal. So I just killed every single spider, every single egg up to Angora, and then before you fight Angora, you want to make sure you clear out these eggs as well. I've said this, you know, even pre-Gloomrot, this is the most important thing to do. Just kill all these eggs so that you don't have to worry about them breaking before the fight, or during the fight with Angora. It's going to make your life so much easier. And with the new and improved Ward of the Damned, even though it was already broken for this fight, she just becomes so much easier. So I just was kind of walking around. Reaper, again, I was just so much more comfortable using Reaper in these fights than pistols. Pistols probably would work on this if you're good enough with it, but it's so much easier just to move around while you're doing this. You stop for a second to throw your E, and that's it. And then you're still moving around, doing damage and whatnot. So pretty easy fight. I hit a couple times, but wasn't too bad. Definitely confident I could beat her earlier if I can figure out a way to get the Shroud earlier as well. So from there, we just came back to base to do some of our base management here, and decided to hit up Raziel. At this point, we're just clearing out a bunch of bosses. I'm skipping at some of the farming situation, some of the farming that we did, just because it's not really that eventful. At this level, Raziel is super easy. I'm used to beating him at a significantly lower level than this, so it really isn't all that challenging if you're kind of paying attention. Which, as you can see here, ending off the fight with a decently high HP pool, getting orbital lasered by this holy beam, celebrating, God is celebrating us defeating Raziel there. So my duo partner and I went from there up to the Werewolf Village to take on Wilfred. And also get as much pristine hide as we possibly could. But something to note with Wilfred, by the way, previously spiders were super, super good to kill the ads that he summons when he's at half HP. They're still pretty good at doing that, but the fact that they don't leave the poison cloud anymore like they used to makes them a little bit less powerful. You'll see in this this part here, just using these spiders just really doesn't do as much as it used to against these guys. say. I mean, there's some, a half or so, but they're not. This doesn't seem to be as good as it was. So maybe look for different ults. Maybe Raging Storm, whatever it's called, the ult you get from Octavian might be good. Also, this I thought it was a bug, giant jump scare. I was like, what in the world? So those who are familiar with the old version of Wilfred or old version of the game, sometimes 2 Wilfreds would spawn as a bug, and I thought, did that just happen? So but a little bit of a jump scare there, but we got it taken care of. So there, it was time to take on the Cursed Smith, which this fight was actually, I don't know, do people have a hard time with this fight? This fight seemed like a joke to me, honestly. I mean, I'm not trying to I don't know, brag or whatever. I had no idea what was going to happen. I had no frame of reference of what was going to happen here. So I literally just did my normal strategy of keeping my distance and throwing things at him, and then using shields whenever it seemed like he was going to do something. And, everything is moving so slowly for the most part. The ads he summons, these swords, I was like, oh, maybe I'll try to kill that. I don't really know what's going to do to me. But I mean, look at it. They just, slowly move towards you, and then they eventually attack. And you have these little spinning balls, so it's basically just like a bullet hell with things that randomly decide to attack you. And then with the ads that you spawn with Ward of the Damned, it draws aggro too. So again, there's a lot going on here, but this is like a blind fight. I had no idea what this guy even did, and I'm just kind of walking around. Right here, I'm at max HP. I mean, there's so many things going on, right? But I'm just walking. Look, I'm literally just walking around. And that's all I'm doing. Just walking around. I mean, look how many summons there are. I'm like, are they going to do something? I don't really know what's happening. So I'll dash away from that attack. And these spears charge up and they attack me, but I'm just walking still, so nothing's even happening. I'm like, is this working as intended? I don't really understand what's going on here. So I don't know. Maybe it's harder than I think it is in some other aspect, but maybe I got lucky. But this is kind of a little ridiculous to me, just walking in circles, dodging when there seems like something's going to happen. And I come out of it pretty much full health. So from there, on the way back home, met a random low-level guy. He seemed a little scared of me at first. So I thought, I don't really need this mace anymore. Why don't you take it, dude? And, made his day. It never hurts to make allies here and there, especially whenever they're a lot lower level. You don't have to really worry about them coming back to attack you. And maybe you'll get into a situation where you need somebody, and they'll come in clutch and be on your side. So we went back to base, made a full set of Dawnthorn real quick, and then took our first trip into Gloomrot. This is my first time in. I didn't even come in here for mats. My teammates were doing it, so I came and just did the trio here. Ziva the Engineer. This fight seemed kind of interesting. Yeah, it seemed pretty interesting. I'll have to do some more work and see the best way to deal with it. Wasn't too bad with Word of the Damned and whatnot, simply because of the the minigun attack. Just spawning as many enemies as you possibly could. We also found, similarly, we also found another group of people who left their doors open here. Just friendly neighborhood citizens here, just being good citizens and letting them know, hey, we can jump in your base. So from there, we fought this dude with the reflective shield. Honestly, doing it in the daytime was really dumb. I just kind of was doing it. There's just no shade at all. You just stand underneath these tents. But if you're doing it with a teammate, it makes it so much easier. Just make sure, right there, teammate hit the back, no big deal. But it's really nice doing it with 2 people because one person stands in front, one person stands in back, and then whatever the shield is, the other guy attacks. Whatever the shield is, the person that's not facing the shield attacks him. And it's pretty easy, pretty simple fight. Lot of loot as well. Doing bosses with multiple people. Really good at the later into the game where you can really start getting the loot that matters. Then we came up and fought Domina. Honestly, again, I went into this fight blind. She was doing a lot of damage and very just random spastic attacks. It would take me a while to really figure out what she does. That was my mistake, to just not pay attention. I'm here with a teammate. We're kind of just both attacking her. I had no idea what was even going on. It just was insane. The whole time I'm like, she would say something and I'm like, is that another attack? And then something like this would happen. Then I would get caught out with no dash and would just, polarity shift, and all of a sudden she starts just destroying me. So anyway, we got that taken care of. Not too bad whenever you're way over leveled. So I'll have to revisit that another time whenever I'm not over leveled and see what happens. And here, just to show the power of these caves and building close to the exits of these caves from Gloomrot, I mean, just look at this. You know, I jump in this cave and pop out. I mean, I'm right next door. You can see on the map there, the blue territory is my base. And, you know, we just hop right out and we are home already with a full inventory of loot. So super nice to be that close to the cave. I'm really trying to figure out exactly what location is best for the cave. I'm thinking it's probably going to be closer, more on the west side, closer to Silverlight. I think is probably what it's come down to for me. It's just simply because it's easier to ride back from Silverlight and whatnot. So I actually had set up a tiny little outpost up north in Silverlight, just to have a spot so I could deposit a bunch of stuff, you know, silver and whatnot. Which, by the way, speaking of silver, this cave is like the coolest thing ever. This is my favorite addition in Gloomrot. This is so cool what they did with Silvermine. I wasn't expecting something this cool. Honestly, it's almost like a mini dungeon. It really does feel like a mini little dungeon. Not necessarily an instance or something, but just like a little dungeon. You know, they had this cool little rat hole here, which, by the way, might be worth, if you're maybe working or sitting around, if you want some loot, just hide out here as a rat and wait for chests to spawn, because look at this loot. I mean, for real, that is insane. You know, these gold chests there. I mean, I found, I think, 2 of them while I was in here. My teammate came in later, found 3 of them. Yeah. Also, this is a kind of a cool mechanic in the silver mine. You have these little guys, your prisoners, that they're using to, you know, mine the silver. You know, these wonderfully just humans of the light are, you know, slavers as well. Ironic. But I thought that was pretty cool. So we fought Magnus here, and this fight was, again, I went into this blind, had no idea what he did, but I was on level. I was pretty on level, so I wasn't too worried. The one thing I will say to watch out for is this move. Just time that move there. It doesn't do a ton of damage. It's just the stun is really dangerous, so be careful of that. I swapped to Unholy for that because I was like, we might as well draw some aggro off and these little ads around. It might be, obviously it's probably smart to kill the ads before you start the fight, just so you don't have to worry about them. And then, yeah, so you have has all these different frost moves, and then this right here, when he does Ice Block, be really careful, just knock him out of that as fast as you can so he doesn't heal and destroy you. And finally, something I noticed, if you need gold chains, this guy drops, at least in my experience, he drops a ton of them. I fought him a couple times now. Each time he's dropped like 6+ chains. So definitely something to look at there. And this right here just shows the power of having a base in Silverlight, you know, an outpost if you're on a squad server. Obviously, if you're on a 1-heart server, then you won't be able to do this. But, you know, these legendaries and stuff, you can keep these and teleport them through the teleporter if you need to. You know, just kind of looking through and see what these things were and what the stats were. Learning, using my brain power to try to figure out what exactly I was looking at. But yeah, it's super nice to have these outposts up here where you can just kind of drop the things that you don't want to lose. Just toss them in here, and then you can just take a teleporter back to your base. And then also, something to note as well, like I mentioned about the base location, the reason I was saying further west Silverlight is probably better is I tried these caves out from Silverlight. You know, my base currently is near Coppermine, and using these caves, the Silverlight cave, is kind of pointless, honestly, because you just kind of end up running the same distance. Now, it might be a little safer because you're running through Farbane instead of Silverlight specifically, but I mean, look how far back I'm having to run here. You just have to run so far just to get back to the base. So I think it's probably smarter to build a little further west so that, you know, obviously where our base is fine, but build a little bit further west and maybe make an outpost in Silverlight, maybe on the southern side of Silverlight, so that where your items and gear are, you know, easily accessible. Then we got, you know, from here we got our silver refining. You know, it takes a lot less time to do this, which is really nice. I mean, they've definitely changed a lot of the way that the loot works, that the refinement works. Timing has been fixed. I really enjoy these changes. I used to prefer playing on 1.5 to 2x loot and refinement servers because everything was just so long that it was just kind of boring for me. But at this point, they've made so many adjustments with what it takes to actually like make things and whatnot that it is just so much better. It's so much better. I think the 1x official servers feel amazing. I tried out a 2x server recently, last night, and it just felt really cheesy, just getting through everything so insanely fast. So yeah, this right here just shows again the power of these caves. I know I've mentioned this multiple times, but I mean, just look how fast I'm able to zip up. We had another outpost base up in Gloomrot here. Look how fast I'm able to zip up here, get the things I need, and then I mean I'm right next to this cave, right next to the cave, which comes out. I mean, you'll just see how close this comes out. Compared to our base near Coppermine, this thing comes out right next to it. I mean, right next to it. I mean, it comes out at Coppermine. So just look on the mini map here. You'll see. I mean, we're home. So I got the thing I needed. Hit the cave, and you're home, which has tons of advantages. Obviously, for just fast loot, safe looting. You're out, out of not in the world for a really long time. So if there's a lot of people in your area who are trying to, a lot of PvP going on, and you don't want to lose stuff, super easy to just get back home. At this point, we'd been playing for, I think total, this was about, I want to say about 8 hours. Yeah, it was about 8 hours or so, maybe 8.5 hours, and I was getting a dark silver weapon. This time I decided I'm just not going to mess around with any of the other weapons. I'm just going axes. They're my favorite weapon overall for bossing, mobbing, PvP in general. They're my favorite overall, so I just said let's do that. Another thing to note, it took me an embarrassingly long amount of time to realize that these weapons were salvageable. And we were in dire need of like Scourge Stone and iron at this point, and I was like, man, how am I going to get this? And then all of a sudden I realized you can just nom these in the Devourer, and it kind of blew my mind. For as much as they give, this is pretty fantastic stuff. So if you have a bunch of these and you feel like you don't want to worry about them, just throw these into the Devourer, get your iron, get some Scourge Stone, which goes towards Spectral Dust, which goes towards Dark Silver, and some other really important items. So, I mean, fantastic. Don't sleep on that. I slept on it for way too long. Here we threw down our Ancestral Forge. I just wanted to have this down just in case so we could see what was going on. I hadn't really looked at to see what, like, costs were and whatnot, so that was good to see. Here's a brief little pause. I'll skip a lot of the farming that I did. At this point, this was the majority of the rest of the run. Like I said, it was 8.5 hours to that silver weapon, and then it was probably another hour and a half of just farming things, getting the things that we didn't that we needed. I felt like we were kind of behind on some loot and whatnot, even though I had spent basically the majority of this run just pushing progression as hard as I could. I felt like we were going a little too fast, if that makes sense. Obviously, it's good to be a high level and be farming things. But yeah, I also want to test out some of those spells. And then we came up here, fought the Elementalist. I'm going to be honest, this may sound ridiculous. Out of all of the hundreds of hours that I have in this game, I've only fought this boss twice. Yes, you heard me right. I'm not exaggerating. I've only fought this boss twice. Because in the previous version, I found her to be completely pointless. Like, there's just no point to even fighting her from a progression standpoint, unless you just wanted to have fun. So you can see right here, that's why I just got absolutely obliterated, because I'm totally unfamiliar with this fight. Like, I legitimately forget, like, every time she does stuff, I'm like, oh yeah, duh. So I'm just getting wrecked this whole time. But, we got it done anyway. She's needed now for the tier 3 jewels, and also I want to say the Greater Holy Resist pot, but also something to note with that. You can just buy one of these with Gold Sun from the traders in Brighthaven. So if you don't want tier 3 gems right away, you don't really need to fight her. Just get some Gold Sun, go in there with human form, and yoink it. So at this point, we were nearing the end of this particular evening. My teammates had already logged off, and I decided, you know what, they're off, but I'm going to get a little bit of work done while they're off here. So I came up to fight one of my favorite fights personally is Azariel. It seems really, really crazy at first, but it's really not that hard. Axes are a huge help here. You'll see here what happens when he says kneel before the light. This is why we like axes, because they can actually incapacitate him out of that move. So, we're sitting here fighting him, he teleports away, and then he says kneel before the light, and I just say, nah, boom, incapacitate, that move stops, he doesn't heal himself. So, really simple fight. I took a bunch of damage, but I was kind of just doing it, wasn't super trying, because I was pretty confident that I was going to be able to get this without much effort. So killed him and grabbed the loot. Just check a little loot check here. Another legendary. I like to see that. And then went back home. These, oh yeah, so these teleporters, by the way, fantastic. Demon mount, super fantastic. Or vampire mount, anyway, super amazing. But the teleporters are just super nice. So nice. Even though don't do it near a horse. So before I went out, got off for bed, I decided to just get that Athenium so we could finally have access to tier 3 weapons and armor, like the upgraded versions of them. I went into this fight blind. Definitely an interesting fight. Super, super good. I really enjoyed this. These new bosses have such cool boss mechanics, honestly, even though they are a little tricky. And so something I noticed with him, I had Spider ult here, and I was using axes. Spider ult because I figured I might as well just burst them down, because spiders do a ton of burst damage if you can hit them all together. So I just, hey, all right, we'll use these spiders right here real quick. But the issue I ran into was with the, this counter. I wasn't really sure what was going on with that, so I kind of was just throwing stuff at him and to see what would happen. I felt like I was doing pretty good at first, and then this happened here. He pushes me into the wall, and I was like, oh, okay. I had my pistols on for too long, and just took way too much damage. It dropped me down to damage tier, and so I just took so much damage with those things on. And look, I went from full health to basically very much in trouble very quickly. But I was thinking that I could probably still do it, so I kept fighting here. I didn't back off, but then he pushed me into the wall again, and you'll see what happens here. And I was trying to figure out what to do, and there you go. Just got damage comboed, and boom. That was probably, that was one of our few deaths so far against the bosses. I haven't done PvP yet this run, but that was one of our few deaths this far. So I came back to fight him, and I realized, you know what? Let's just be a little smarter here. And I saved my spider ult for at this point here, so that whenever he was lower HP, I could burst him down from the point where he starts doing the pushback move. I could burst him down from there, so we didn't have as many opportunities to do that pushback move. So that helped a lot. Honestly, that really did help. So just, keep that in mind. Just wait for him to do it when he gets to the point where he's doing the annoying mechanics, and then boom, easy peasy. So, got the Athenium down, finally got our stuff unlocked, which luckily I was able to get I think it's called the Pendant of the Warlock or something along those lines, as well as Jewel Chamber Flooring. Warlock, which used to be called the Shard of the Frozen Crypt, so I was super excited about that. Amazing. It's probably, I don't know what the other ones look like, but it's probably going to be, still to this day, probably going to be one of the best necklaces in the game, if not the best. But anyway, that was the end of the night, and I took a break from there. So thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. If you have any comments or any kind of tips or anything things that you've learned, feel free to leave them below. But thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and we will catch you in the next one.